pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me now in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Remember to silence your cell phones if you brought them today. And our first item on the agenda, as always, is citizen concerns. Are there any citizens who would like to speak on an item which is not on the agenda? Hearing none, item 2 is approval of the agenda May 9th, today.
Move approval of the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 3 is a couple good news reports. Wanted to share with you all, if you're not already aware, item A is that Woodbury County has won a National Achievement Award for our cost-saving LED retrofit and becoming the first in the state, as far as counties go, to have this retrofit done. This was begun back in 2015 under the recommendation of Supervisor Taylor, and has been brought to fruition by board members and by staff and by those, architects and project managers, and it's really been a very good process, and it's a real no-brainer, I think. It's been very successful, and so Woodbury County's been given this National Achievement Award. If you look at NACO awards, which is where this is coming from, over the last year, you notice that most of them are actually on the coast, east and west, so it's pretty rare for a Midwest county to get one of these National Achievement Awards. So again, this will be formally presented during their annual conference in July.
Are you planning to attend, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very
I'm
good.
planning to attend and receive on behalf of the county.
Great. Thank you very much.
Are you planning to attend?
I'm not,
Okay.
but I'm glad.
Item B is CASA Denim Day. A good news report is that $225 was raised from Woodbury County employees, and special thanks to Chris Garthright Chawarka for organizing this, and we really appreciate that. Moving on to item 4, this is Human Resources at Gilliland. This is a presentation of award certificates to Carla Pauley and Don Norton. Please give a 30-second, 1-minute synopsis and what this means.
What we've got is an award for donations over a period of time. It's actually a 6-gallon award. It's quite a bit of blood to donate. They've given that freely, and this is our way of saying thank you to Dawn and to Carla Pauley, who wasn't able to make it. Would you like to come up and receive your award?
Thank you, Don. And this we'll get to.
Thank you.
I'm glad you emphasized that they were given freely, so that was very important.
Good clarification. I always want to be careful. We are now at a 4:35 set time for item 5. This is Board Administration / Public Bidder, Heather Satterwhite. First is a public hearing and sale of property parcel also known as 1329 Jennings Street. So the public hearing now is open. Anyone wishing to speak for or against the sale of this property may approach the board before we receive bids. Hearing none, I'd move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Second by Taylor. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. We are now in the sale portion of this item, and anyone wishing to bid on this item may come forward. State your name and address and your opening bid.
Just come up to the microphone here.
My name is Margarita Cross, going to bid on 1329.
And your opening bid?
I'm not 100% sure of the bid cost, but
The minimum bid is $222 plus recording fees.
okay, I'd like to bid at $220.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to bid on this property? Going once, going twice. Move to sell the property for $222 plus recording fees to Margarita. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by DeWitt. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you. You just bought yourself a piece of property.
If you want the other one too, you can stay up here. We got to sell the second one yet.
Are you bidding on the second property?
1331.
Okay, very good. Then we will move on to that item.
I just had one question.
Sure.
Is that a one lot together? Is that the one?
It's two separate lots, so the 1329 is the south lot, and that was 225 that you just bid.
My question is it the one across the street from it, or is it
They're side by side.
they're just side by side?
Yes.
We are now on to item 5B, which is a 4:37 set time. We are in the public hearing portion of sale of property parcel, also known as 1331 Jennings Street. Once again, if there's anyone to speak for or against the sale of this property, please come forward at this time. Hearing none, I'd move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Second by Radig. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Now we are in the sale portion of this item. Is there anyone who would like to bid? And your opening bid is $229, correct? Okay.
Plus fees.
$229 plus fees is the opening bid. Is there anyone else who would like to bid on this property?
So just to clarify, Mr. Chair, the 229 includes the cost of services, correct?
Plus recording fees is the
Okay,
language
plus
in the
recording fees.
resolution.
Thank you.
Going once, going twice. Move to sell the property for $229 plus recording fees to Margarita.
Second.
Second by DeWitt. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you again. And Heather is on this side and will answer any questions you have. We are a couple minutes ahead of our 4:40 set time, so I will begin going through the consent agenda. Items 7 through 17 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate roll call vote is requested by a board member. Some of these may have questions or further discussion, and that's perfectly fine as we go through it. Item 7 is approval of the minutes of the April 25th meeting. Item 8 is approval of claims. Item 9 is to receive the auditor's quarterly report. Mr. Gill, any comments there? Nope. Item 10 is Veterans Affairs, Danielle Dempster. A is to receive Commission of Veteran Affairs quarterly report. And B is approval of an appointment of Emily D. Clayton to the Commission of Veteran Affairs. There's a letter in our backup material signed by all the members of that commission. Item 11, Board Administration, Dennis Butler, is approval of setting a public hearing for fiscal year 2017 budget amendment for May 30th at 4:45 p.m. This is a routine budget amendment procedure as far as publishing the public hearing. There's a lot of backup materials in our packets that we can get to if there's any immediate questions, but they will all be repeated in the meeting for May 30th, in which Dennis Butler will be here and will be able to answer any of those questions as well, and it will not be on the consent agenda at that time. We'll take a break from this part and move back to the 4:40 p.m. set time, which is item 6, an action item from David Gleiser and Board Administration Dennis Butler. A is a public hearing and approval of the resolution for the 2017 amendment to the Grow Woodbury County Urban Renewal Area and Urban Renewal Plan as proposed.
Supervisors, this is David Gleiser, Woodbury County Rural Economic Development Director. This amendment is just a requirement to help facilitate the Gelita expansion, which is a $22 million capital investment. We have met all the statutory requirements in terms of the board approving a resolution on March 28th to set the public hearing date. We scheduled and held a consultation meeting on April 19th, and notice of the public hearing was published in the Sioux City Journal on April 21st, and the proposed amendment and plan was reviewed and approved by the Woodbury County Planning and Zoning Commission on April 24th. So with that, I'd let you entertain beginning the public hearing.
We are in a public hearing. Is there any, are there any questions or concerns on this item from the public?
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I'd move the public hearing be closed.
Second?
Motion by Taylor, second by Raddick to close the public hearing. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Go ahead.
Would also request that the supervisors approve the resolution to formally amend the plan.
I'd move to approve the resolution for the 2017 amendment to the Grow Woodbury County Urban Renewal Area and Urban Renewal Plan as proposed.
Motion by Taylor, and I will second that motion. Any further discussion or extra perspective from you, Mr. Gleiser?
No, thank you.
Very good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you, and we will invite you back up in 8 minutes for our next set time. We are returning to the consent agenda. I did not hear any comments on item 11, the public hearing for the budget amendment. So again, this will be repeated and discussed more substantively at the May 30th meeting. Item 12 is approval of a resolution for a tax suspension for initials DB. Item 13 from Board Administration, Heather Satterwhite. A is approval of a notice of a property sale resolution for a parcel also known as 3101 13th Street and setting that for Tuesday, May 23rd at 4:35 p.m. And item B is approval of the notice of property sale resolution for a parcel also known as 1104 West 23rd Street and setting that for Tuesday, May 23rd at 4:37. 14A is approval of resolution adopting and levying special assessment in the Little Sioux Inter-County Drainage District of Monona, Woodbury, and Harrison Counties, Iowa. B is approval of resolution adopting and levying special assessment in the McCandless Inter-County Drainage District of Monona and Woodbury County, Counties, Iowa. C is approval of resolution adopting and levying special assessment in the Sandhill Lakeport Inter-County Drainage District of Monona and Woodbury Counties, Iowa. D is approval of resolution adopting and levying special assessment in the Woodbury-Monona Lateral 2 Drainage District, Woodbury County, Iowa. For the benefit of new board members, would we like to hear from the department head on what this entails, or are there no questions on this process of special levy assessments? Very well. Item 15 from the County Auditor's Office. Mr. Hoffmeyer is appointing Karen Benar as Mobile Township Clerk and David Benar as Mobile Township Trustee. Item 16 from Human Resources. Item A is approval of memorandum of personnel transactions. Ed, could you just explain why there are several resignations from Sheriff Reserves officers? Is this the natural thing that an annual?
I would imagine it's just and Dave, I'm going to ask for your help on this one. Resignations from the reserve officers. We had several this time. Is there any particular reason? We always look to review everyone, and I think we had issues with.
I do believe like some just get other jobs, or they can't perform the duties, and so they just move on.
Yeah, I think it was just people that probably weren't being utilized appropriately by, or didn't make themselves available enough for the sheriff. That type of thing as well.
I figured it was a periodic, because there are several.
Annual purging.
Not quite that, but.
No, but there were just some people that were not, as I understand it, that really weren't able to put in the hours.
Thank you. Also wanted to congratulate in the memorandum the promotion to major of Mr. Wingert, as noted by the sheriff, and of course taking the place of someone who's leaving us later this week, Major Stallman. Have some remarks on his leaving us and his promotion into perhaps greener pastures. When we different pastures, as we discuss the county sheriff's item coming up. Item B is to authorize the chairman to sign authorization to initiate the hiring process. Item C is approval of retiree requests to remain on the supplemental health insurance program. Item 17 from Planning and Zoning, Mr. Palello, is approval of a resolution to approve final plating and authorize the chairman to sign regarding the Whiskey Acres addition subdivision. And we have some maps up at the board table. Are there any questions on that item? We have reached the end of the consent agenda, and I'll entertain a motion to.
I will move the consent agenda.
I'll second for discussion.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor for discussion.
So just on item 10, Veteran Affairs, we have the approval of the appointment of Emily D. Clayton to the Commission of Veteran Affairs. And I think it's appropriate to highlight not only her volunteerism, someone who's been in Siouxland District Health and military service, want to recognize that as well. Appreciate your willingness to serve and the fact that you've served in some hard places. I think a medical surgical floor, having been at Fort Sam Houston and looked at the trauma ward, is one of the hardest places to serve. So very appreciative of your past service and your willingness to serve in the future. So thank you very much. So, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, and apologize for not acknowledging you. We do have the letter, and it bodes well for the commission. Appreciate your time as an Air Force veteran. So, is there any other discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 18 is an action item from the American Legion Post 64, Chuck Swan and Wayne Lindgren. It's a consideration of request of the Board of Supervisors to abate past due property taxes at 4019 to 4021 Floyd Boulevard. Understanding we only have 2 minutes before our next set time, first I'd like to ask, I asked the board office to give kind of a heads up to our board attorney on this item. Is there anything prospective or a legal procedure the board needs to be aware of, or any sort of advice you'd have?
On abatement?
Yes.
Abatements, the board essentially has discretion to make such decision.
I'll move the abatement of the taxes here on 18.
I'll second.
Very well. Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Discussion. There's a backup material in our agendas. If there's ever a good reason to abate taxes, it's this one. So I appreciate what you gentlemen do. And thank you for advising the board office of some of the background so we can all have a chance to look at that beforehand.
Well, it hasn't passed yet. Just teasing.
And we thank you for your service as well.
You still heard our problem, and thank you so much.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Now you're good.
Sir. We are now at our 4:50 set time, which is item 6B, an action item, a public hearing and approval of a resolution to authorize the chairman to sign the Joleta Development Agreement as proposed. The public hearing is open. Is there anyone who has questions or concerns on this item? Or is there any background you'd like to provide, Mr. Gleiser?
No, sir. I mean, basically, this is the final step in a process that we initiated with Joleta back in November of 2016. Under this agreement, the county will pay $499,612 in tax increment payments to the company over 5 years. And again, that's a $22 million capital investment that's going to create 21 full-time jobs that all qualified for state incentives under the High Quality Jobs Program. And staff recommendation would be to approve and authorize, to approve the resolution and authorize the chairman to sign the development agreement.
Hearing no further public discussion, I'd move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second by Raddick. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0, and we need one more motion.
I do have a question on this too. In the agreement there, I didn't see any minimum assessment agreement.
Yes, there is a minimum assessment agreement,
Okay, I just didn't find it then.
and off the top of my head, I apologize because I don't remember.
Oh, it was a $22 million expansion. It was
I think, Dennis, did we get a
It's all
$22 million minimum assessment on that?
I'm not sure.
I just didn't see it, and I just wanted to know if we had it in there somewhere. But I'll go ahead and move.
It would be, I believe that's what it was. That's typically what we would recommend is what the capital investment would be the minimum assessment.
I'll move the approval of the resolution and authorize the chairman to sign the development agreement as proposed.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
I also wanted to ask, is that like camouflage? I was driving through Glen Oaks, and it looked like that's about one of the yard colors up in your neck of the woods there. I didn't know.
Fortunately, I sprayed weed and grass killer on my lawn, so thank you for recognizing.
In a public forum, we really appreciate that.
Let it be known, if a satellite can see your home, so can Supervisor Raddick. All in good fun. Item 19 is two information items from the County Sheriff, Dave Drew. Before we head into this, if it's okay with you, Sheriff, I just wanted to mention Greg Stallman. He had to step out. Well, he can view this recording on YouTube.
Oh, there he is.
Hi, he's in the back there for the good of the public watching. Certainly appreciate, well, perhaps I'll mention that after the proclamation. So I'd invite you to come up if you have any comments, and then you had asked me to read this proclamation.
Sure. So you want me to add to it?
Yeah, anything, if you have anything, you want to mention the dates,
yeah.
what the events are.
Well, it's a practice that I believe has taken place for the last 22 years that I can recall. It was after the death of Corporal Herman. Corporal Herman's mom and another people got involved in trying to have a monument recognizing those that had fallen in the line of duty. And Chris Herman, the mother, has tirelessly worked to get that built, and it has the police department's members that have fallen, the sheriff's office, and I believe the fire department. And so it's a wonderful thing that sits near City Hall, and every year we have a memorial service recognizing those that have fallen, and it's during Police Memorial Week. And unfortunately, the way it has gone over the last few years, we have spent too many times going to deputies or officers' funerals across the country. Yesterday, we spent several hours there, and I would say this for the citizens of Council Bluffs that came out in droves to support their fallen officer. It was amazing. I've gone to Dallas, I've gone to Kansas City a couple times, Des Moines, and in Iowa, when we lose someone, that community comes out like nobody's business because they support law enforcement. And it was very, very moving, to say the least. Service was, of course, I never worry about law enforcement showing up, a couple thousand, and we always count on New York, PD, and Chicago, and all the big agencies. But the smaller agencies made it, and it's a wonderful showing of support, a going home ceremony for one who has given his ultimate sacrifice. So I appreciate it.
Right. Yes, and as a show of respect, as we read these names, the sheriff and I would invite you to stand as a measure of respect and read this. This is a Woodbury County Police Week proclamation. To recognize National Police Week 2017 and to honor the service and sacrifice of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty while protecting our communities and safeguarding our democracy. Whereas there are approximately 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Woodbury County Sheriff's Office. Whereas nearly 60,000 assaults against law enforcement officers are reported each year, resulting in approximately 16,000 injuries. Whereas since the first recorded death in 1791, more than 20,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made this ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty, including 11 law enforcement members in Woodbury County, Iowa, to wit, Special Agent Kevin J. Kramer, 1996, Captain Philip A. Heimbecker, 1993, Corporal John E. Herman, 1993, Patrolman Warren T. Hodgkins, 1973, Captain Joseph P. Davidchick, 1968, Matron Mary Eileen Heilman, 1959, County Attorney James R. Brody, 1959, Chief Deputy Jimmy Biggs, 1959, Patrolman Sylvan E. Dijkstra, 1953, Deputy Lewis R. Jones, 1921, Chief Detective James G. Britton, 1919. Whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Sioux City, Iowa, whereas 144 new names of fallen heroes from 2016 are being added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this spring, whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Memorial Fund's 29th Annual Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 13th, 2017 in Washington, D.C., whereas the Candlelight Vigil is part of National Police Week, which takes place this year, May 15 to 21. Whereas May 15th is designated as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and U.S. flags should be flown at half-staff. Therefore, be it resolved that the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors formally designates May 15 to 21, 2017 as Police Week in Woodbury County, Iowa, and publicly salutes the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation. So with a grateful heart, we as a county remember and appreciate those in this line of work. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you. And just give me a second. I just wanted to say we usually have our service on Monday at noon, but the chief was out of town, so we moved it this year to Wednesday at noon. I would invite the board if they could make it Wednesday at noon, and it'll be, weather permitting, out in front by the City Hall where we've had it every year, or probably inside City Hall. But we would obviously let everybody know if the weather plays a role.
Very good. And this was an information item. No action was needed. Before we go to item B, with Major Stallman joining us for at least a couple days this week, wanted to mention we do have a practice of honoring different employees for their years of service, almost 22, I'm told. So something will be forthcoming from the board office at the next board meeting. I realize by then you'll be in different pastures, but I'm sure the sheriff will get that proclamation and honoring to you, and you can send hearts to us and vice versa as you have during meetings. So you look like you want to say something.
It's been great here. Obviously, I'm going to the Des Moines area, so fortunately, I'll get to see a lot of my brethren when they come down to Des Moines for training still. Active, we're very active in law enforcement across the state of Iowa, so I intend to continue. It's been a lot of fun, especially all the changes and stuff that are coming with the jail. I think it's really been prioritized by Sheriff Drew the past 5 years, and it reflects that and where we're at with our account and stuff. So I appreciate everyone. I got a lot of love for everybody that's here. So thank you.
Very good. We appreciate your work, especially in regards to the LEC and all the changes we've been.
Now, Dave, too, you got a place to stay when you go down to Des Moines. You can just Chief Dahlman's house.
Yeah, well, nothing against him, but I'd rather stay with my brother. So. That's where he's staying until he gets a house, so I guess that works out.
Very good. We'll get back on. Thank you. Get back on track to item 19B. This is an information item from the sheriff. Discussion on Iowa Code 356.7, room and board fee dispersal with the 60-40 split between the sheriff's office and Woodbury County.
Give me a minute to kind of peruse that. I'll talk and let you kind of look at it. One of the things that have taken place over the last 5 years as sheriff, I have brought up the importance of room and board and what the code says about room and board and how it should be handled. And I think the intent of the previous board and for years past was well intended, but not in accordance to what the code requires. So I had asked for the county attorney's assistance in this, and Abigail, she gets a lot of emails from me. So she looked it over, and she was in agreement that this procedure is how room and board fees should be split up. And so what I'm here to ask the board is to look at it similar to, I would say, I got a little note here, kind of what Mr. Taylor, when he started the LED program, there may be some initial costs at the beginning, but in the long run, you're going to see substantial money for the county to build. And so here's where I'm going. Speaking with different sheriffs using a 60-40 split, they have improved their courthouse security. Now, some of that's up for debate, but it doesn't mean that we don't need cameras and more things to make our workplace safe. So those dollars can be used towards that. It goes on and lists a number of things. One of the things that, if you recall, I know it would be Jeremy and Matthew, when they did some tuck pointing at Prairie Hill and the roof and all those things, if these fees were set aside, those dollars could have been used instead of going into reserves and other things. So what it really does is helps the sheriff to have a line item and strictly start generating revenue and using that revenue towards being able to do things. Juvenile detention, doors, it's specific in there that the money can go to help juvenile detention. It can go to help pay for a number of items. Here's some examples. When we go to some of the seminars that deal with jail, we need better devices to keep us from having contraband come in. Contraband is the biggest issue that's in any jail. Those things cost, one item that we looked at was $75,000, but there was others that were similar to going through the airport x-ray machine at all the airports. And those costs come up, but in most jails they'll say that these things are so important, resting on the officers trying to get things and they have gloves on and they miss it. We have that happen quite often. And some of these devices will help alleviate a lot of time. Of course, we're always going to rely not totally on these types of equipment, but doing it ourselves too. But you have to understand, when we have gloves on, we're maybe not able to feel things because we don't want to get pricked by a needle or things such as that. So some of these items can help us. And I think it's a better way to budget, because what we do is we raise these dollars. And yeah, sure, you're going to be short on the other end, but as I said earlier, if you let these dollars continue to grow and you just don't go spend it every year, you let it grow, maybe when we're looking at 1.2 million, if we set aside $200,000 per year over a certain amount of time, we could have that dollars. And those dollars come in from room and board fees and the marshal. I'm just going to give you a quick idea. I put it on my phone so I can remember what exactly we take in.
Where does it go currently in the budget?
It goes in, Dennis would tell you, it goes into, I believe, the general fund and then goes into ours. I don't know if all of it does, but.
The revenue for the federal care and the board and room from the prisoners goes into the general basic fund, which helps hold our line on taxes. One thing Dave and I did talk to.
Do you have a microphone, Dennis?
Yes.
Okay.
And the one thing that I did talk to Dave about was that if the board does determine to do this, because indirectly you are using some of this money already for costs like warrant service and processing. You are using this money already, but if you decide to set it aside, say for a project, you're going to make up that money somewhere else in general basic fund, either by raising taxes or cutting expenses or generating revenue somewhere else. Because if, say it's $300,000, you take $300,000 away from your revenue, because the balance of budget, you're using revenue and taxes and carryovers to balance it. You're taking this money away, setting aside somewhere else for another project, you have to make it up somewhere else, or you raise taxes. So there is a catch to the whole thing. Conservation Reserve was a prime example. When we set that up, you did take the park fees that generally went into the general basic and put that in a separate fund for improvements to the parks. That did affect our general basic fund levy. So it's just a word of caution. You are using the money now for various costs that are listed in this section here without doing that. But there may be a specific purpose you want to use this money for. But there is a catch to it.
Mr. Taylor?
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, isn't it all kind of a wash anyway? Because if, let's say you have that 300,000, 60% of it is dispersed, you've got 180,000. The sheriff is using that on courthouse security, on infrastructure improvement at the jail, then that's costs less what we would have to disperse ultimately, correct?
If you're doing a project or you're borrowing money to do the project, it could offset the borrowing costs.
Okay, so
to
then my
improve the jail.
follow-on question is, under whose purview is that money? Does that make sense? If you set up a fund, is that at the discretion of the sheriff per this code section, or is that?
Well, I'm going to let Abigail speak on it because I'm not an attorney. Sometimes I think I am, but let me just say this. My understanding of this is the sheriff and the board enter into a 2080 agreement. Whatever the percentage amount split, 60-40, 40-60, is what is agreed upon. And that is discretionary money for the sheriff. And the other dollars are used towards different items that are listed in this. That's how it's supposed to be done. But I'm going to let Abigail speak on that.
So the answer to your question, I believe what the sheriff passed out is a copy of 356.7. The answer to your question is in 5B and C. On there, it basically says that the sheriff may submit a plan on how to use those funds to the board. He may, not shall. He has the option of doing it. And that if he does, under C, the board shall review it during their budget proceedings. So that's generally how, ultimately the board has discretion over it. It's money that is in the county's general fund, but the sheriff has the option of submitting a plan on how he would like to use that, and the board is required to consider that plan.
So we take in room and board. In 2015, 175,000. 2016, 176. 2017, 168. That's room and board. The marshals in 2015, 295,000, 354,000, and 199,000. So those dollars, at whatever percentage you're going to decide, if that's the way you want to go, and I think my recommendation is I don't think it's something that you do right away. I say let's use it for a year to see where we're at. And then next budget session, we sit down and say, here's an idea. This amount of dollars has now been brought in and saved. So instead of spending it down every year like we do, see the big picture and know that those dollars can be accumulated over years, and they can be used to buy pieces of equipment that can't be budgeted because we don't budget for big ticket items. The sheriff's office is only budgeted to operate really year to year instead of long-term things that are needed to run a jail. That's a big concern. And so I think it's really best that we look long-term and see the big picture. Though I think that the intent is good, and I'm going to get it from understanding that tax askings and all these things, hey, I'm the same guy that pays it, but if the long run, I'm using a little here and you have to catch up, I might not be using on this end. And so, in other words, I'm saying over 5 or 6 years, we put $200,000 away, and 150 of it we just put away. We don't touch till that project we see something needs to be done. So in other words, the HVAC system that we all talk about, that could have been used for that. So when we talk about being good stewards of taxpayers' money, I think this gives the sheriff an opportunity to be a good steward of taxpayers' money as well, and seeing the big picture.
So your argument, Dave, is essentially you're not going to pay interest on a capital improvement project because you're paying for it as you go with the accumulated funds every year. Am I kind of hearing you?
The possibility of capital improvement plans, yeah. But
I think it's more properly termed saving as you go.
Right.
Because then you'd use a chunk.
exactly, yeah.
But
So I'm not the guy who can tell you how to build a building or add on to all these things. I'm a guy that can tell you, if we go this direction, I see it as a better plan long-term for the county instead of going every year, geez, I wish I had this scanning device so our guys don't have to worry about getting shanked. Or I had this so I can do these things. Because quite honestly, the budget's tight. We don't have extra money, but I can use this dollars to help in these things. And I think it's personally the best way to go. And I think by code, I'm in good standing. I got to be honest with you. Other sheriffs throughout the state are doing it. This code was written so it's an equal playing field. Now, whatever percentage you want to come up with, I'm good. 60-40. If you want 60, I'll take 40. I don't care. But I think it's something that we should look at and see next May at this time, how much money have we put away from room and board? And say, wow, okay. So when we set at the budget in February, look what they did. You get X amount, I get X amount. We're going to try to figure out how to make this place safer, more cameras. I'm a camera guy. I think that it also says it could be used for personnel. It lists a number of things that can be used for. And if that offsets asking for things, then I think it's a good direction to go. I look at it honestly as the same as you guys took a risk on the LED. Costs a little bit up front, and long term you're saving.
Mr. DeWitt?
So my question is for Abigail. This is Iowa code.
Correct.
Then how did we get out of this habit in the first place? Do you know?
I don't. I haven't been here for the previous discussions of when this was discussed previously, but the way the code reads is fairly explicit in that 60%, it goes in the general fund, and 60% of that has to be used for these 3 specific things that are listed there.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure about what the history of this has been.
And that's fine. I was just
Yeah.
verifying it's code, and if it's code, we need to be there, don't we?
Is this a thou shalt, or is this a you may?
Shall.
Really?
It's a shall. And it's, like you were talking about, like you could negotiate the percentages. The code doesn't allow for that. It is 60% needs to go towards courthouse security and law enforcement personnel costs, infrastructure for jail, infrastructure for juvenile detention. Those 3 things.
I think you said earlier 40% goes to,
Did I?
yes,
I apologize.
that's okay.
It's 60.
As long as we know going out of here which one. it
I
is.
apologize.
Well, it's 60-40, just a matter of who's 60.
Exactly.
Yeah.
40.
Right.
I apologize.
Okay. And there needs to be a 28E for this to be followed?
No, it does not have to have a 28E. The 28E is discussed in 5B there. It's just saying that that is an option that could be used. If between the board and the sheriff, they wanted to funnel this money and use it through a 28E, they could do that. That's an option available, but it's not a requirement.
5B is full of may. instead of shells. 5C is shall.
We love our mays and shalls.
And whereases.
What-
But first, what does it mean, Abigail, that supervisor shall review the plan or recommendations submitted by the sheriff during the normal budget process? Does that mean there's any sort of approval process, or is it just for the public good, we have to state that these funds are being used by the sheriff in these areas?
It's, the way I read that is that it's saying that you are not obliged to approve the plan that he has put forth. They're just saying you have to consider it.
Okay, Mr. Taylor?
But it's still that 60% that the sheriff puts into those funds, that still has to be used for one of these three purposes. So the sheriff could submit a plan, we could say, we don't approve, but then we can't spend that money, correct? It has to go to, that same 60% has to go to other uses, and he's got to come back with another plan.
Correct. The sheriff can submit his plan as to what he thinks this 60% could use for. You would have to review that, but you have the option of rejecting the entire thing and coming up with your own plan, for example.
I don't have a big beef with this, because I think at the end of the day, if that 60%, if there's 20,000 going to courthouse security and we don't fund 20,000 from the general basic, I mean, at the end of the day, to me, it's not really new money. You know, this board still has the purview to say, okay, we're just going to budget that much less in these areas. Not that we would necessarily do that or want to, but that's the reality at the end of the day. I mean, it's not new money.
No, but the sheriff may submit a plan, so if he doesn't submit the plan, we don't have anything to talk about. As long as it's still, like you said.
Well, I would think that as sheriff, and if I'm spending that kind of money, there is some kind of accountability. And I would, most of that would be, I think, dealing with some bigger issues that we might have that come up. If I had money set aside over 4 or 5 years, and I would have said that, hey, this is a good time to work on making our cells smaller. We could have used those dollars instead of trying to go another route. I think most sheriffs are going to use it to benefit the jail, because that's what it says. It can't be used for me to go, it can be used to go build part of a facility, that we're looking at. My thought is maybe I could pay back some money too in something that we would think that might be able to help the closing of Prairie Hill. So maybe those dollars could be earmarked as the year goes on. It's kind of like a IOU. You and I can enter into an agreement. If I'm taking in X amount, maybe I could use those dollars to help offset those costs. I think it's a win-win. I mean, here's what, are you giving me the money now and I'm giving it to you? It's really the same, but it's just maybe speeds up the process for us.
The approval process I don't see as anything drastically different for the actual dollars. There is a little more ownership from the sheriff's office of those funds, and hopefully, therefore, a little more accountability and purpose to them, as we've talked about.
I mean, I would tell you this, anything that we're going to do that is a big ticket item, do I have to come and tell you? But I think I would, as X amount of dollars I'm going to spend, I'm going to say, hey, we use these dollars from Ruben. It's kind of like you talked about good news deal. Well, good news for us would be, we save this much, and because of room and board and the marshals, we didn't have to go ask the taxpayers to give us more money to buy this scanning device, or we didn't have to ask the taxpayers to go do this, because we took it off the people that are housed in our jail. I think it's a win-win.
I think it's Iowa code.
Where it becomes a little different and could be advantageous financially is if it does offset any sort of capital interest, but then you run into the fact that you're actively saving those dollars that are being taxed for in another area of the budget. But that's a joint decision.
That's out of my area.
Well, it is. It would be part of you.
But I mean, I don't, no, I guess I didn't get that far. I look at it this way. these dollars that I'm putting, it's almost like asset forfeiture. When we go out and seize, we get assets from drug proceeds. We set it aside, and when you have budget hearing, oh, we can't do anything with that money. It's really the same, except now I'm going to, if I was just trying to think of something, a big ticket item in the jail that might help us. Sometimes scanning mail is huge. We do it the old-fashioned way. Not too many jails do it still the way we do it. It's time-consuming. There's a machine that does it. It's $20,000. I don't have the budget for that, but it does it, and it makes sure there's no contraband in it. There's no LSD on the envelope that's being licked. There's a whole lot of things that we could do to make our place that much safer.
Now, these funds, as far as Dennis's world, 6 mentions the city general fund, and they shall be spent on these. So it doesn't set up a separate fund for you, does it? It just earmarks
Just earmark.
within the, okay.
Correct.
So it's not as perhaps complicated as if we had a 28E and we negotiated. That would be an odd thing to do, I think, but.
Right. Some cities have their own jails, so that's why that section's probably in there.
Right.
Where
Okay.
it's all Woodbury County.
Okay.
And anything you do, this is information, as Dave said, this wouldn't take effect till the 18-19 budget year anyway, because you already have these funds obligated for next year to reduce taxes or help offset expenses somewhere. And it says in there during the normal budget process, that makes sense because you're past your normal process. We have our levy set, everything. So it would affect 18-19 budget year. But like Dave says, it's good to keep track of it, see how much it could generate. It could help out.
Have you brought this up in previous years?
Right.
And, I mean, we're hearing from the board attorney that this is Iowa code and presumably we should have been following it. How is that the case? I mean, we had a pretty competent board.
Even though we didn't have formally set up, you were using that 60% for costs as section 7 of this section here.
Okay.
Says you can use it for warrant processing, basically anything to do with law enforcement. So you were doing it, even though it wasn't set up like Dave would say, you set up specific projects for this money. You were using it indirectly.
I think that it's kind of, I don't want to say anything bad about previous boards or anything like that, but I think that the intent was, well, hey, we're giving it to you, but it wasn't according to this. And so if they could have saw the big picture and said, that made sense, this guy's going to put this amount away every year and come back and say, look what I've done, and I can help. Because I know Mark Olson has some jail door issues. If we had that money, in this section, it says that juvenile detention so we could use that money. And so it's, once again, it's that big picture. I think they were using, because everybody's tax dollars are stretched and it's hard, they were just like, well, maybe we'll just do this. Instead of letting it grow and get to the point where you could have, quite a bit of money. If you figure it's 375 and 60% of it's put away, over a few years, you got quite a bit of money.
The savings you'd have is interest, because like the juvenile doors, we are borrowing money to do that. Instead of borrowing, we'd have the funds set there to pay without interest.
But you would need a line item, an extra line item to say how much is left of this pool, wouldn't you? You would have to create
I would say we create a fund like we have for the commissary fund, because
Okay.
that's a carryover each year.
Right.
Okay.
And our financials all be combined into a general fund, but we'd have these subsidiary funds to keep track of this.
Okay.
If we go this route, I'd recommend we do set up a separate fund.
Yeah.
Right.
That way, if you don't spend it, you're carrying it over as a reserve fund.
Because you can't just carry over unless you have a specific fund, right?
No, you can carry over year to year.
Yeah, in something like this, you
Right.
can.
But this would help
Yeah,
keep
that's what I said.
track of it, then you know what expenditures are. And you'd set up in our financials as a reserved account. It wouldn't be unassigned, it'd be reserved.
Mr. Taylor?
How much from year to year? I mean, we've got, and I understand you've got this limited purview of what you're looking at and say, well, that's outside of, but we've got the whole pool, right? And the
Right.
whole piece of the pie. So how much from year to year does this vary? And I guess what I'm wondering is, we are relying on it, right or wrong?
Right.
I'm probably wrong, but we are relying on it right now in a way in other areas. And so from year to year, how much does
Well,
this
good-
vary?
Yeah, good news, bad news.
Okay,
Good news, our census is down, and that's what we all want.
right.
So that would mean room and board would go down. And that's one of the things, they fluctuate so much. And that's why it really is in the best interest of the county just to let that go into that, because there's such fluctuation. To rely on that, I don't think would be fiscally good. So you're gonna put those dollars away and say, this is the percentage. Now, the marshals is pretty much the same most of the time. You'll see that this year the numbers were down. Well, most of the year we were busy until about January. And that's when we got a lot of our jail alternative programs going. And I don't want to divert here a little bit, but you got to give a lot of thanks to Judge Hensley, Lisa McNeil, Greg, Todd Harlow, Dennis Aliath, Dennis Wilson, and now Department of Corrections, Public Defender, and County Attorney, all coming together to help reduce our population. We're probably averaging 170 inmates. So we are fast-tracking people out. We have less than 8 days that they're spending in our jail after they've been sentenced to prison. And before, that could be up to 30 to 45 days. So those are savings that are huge. Personally, I'd rather have less inmates, so I'm pretty happy with that. But that number then would change on room and board. The marshals-wise, you know, it might be a phone call to say, hey, we can house some more. But in this particular time that's upcoming, obviously, we're going to be tasked with one particular inmate that we're going to be helping Potawatomi County. But we will be reimbursed for all those fees by Potawatomi County. But we want to make sure that we have those areas covered. So long story short, Jeremy, I can't give you.
But this guy knows, to your left, how much we budget and how much we're relying on right
Right.
now, right?
Correct. We can go back as many years as you want and pull back what we actually got, take it times 10, tell you for the actuals and tell you right what the dollar would have been.
I mean, I agree, we're obligated to do this. I just want to make sure that everybody understands we're going to face some sort of budget shortfall unless we look at the whole picture and have a written plan if we have been relying on these monies. So that's my only.
Exactly, and if it fluctuates year to year on this year we're saving for a building and this year it's paying personnel, then there is going to be that, so. But we'll get those reports annually, so. Any other questions or thoughts? Did we leave anything out, Abigail?
Well, there is one thing that's, it says the sheriff may submit a plan or the sheriff and board may jointly develop a plan for use of funds. So,
I'm into or.
yeah, I mean, technically,
Listen,
I
I
mean,
want
it's
to
kinda-
work,
oh,
I
yeah,
want to
I'm
work
not-
together to do what's best
Well,
to
that-
provide the jail safety and to, if this project that we're going to be embarking on, we had money set aside, we'd be all sitting pretty happy.
I mean, that could almost go down to whatever, I think you'd call the safety committee or, I don't know, what.
Security.
Security committee, you know.
Right.
You know, before you come to make recommendations for the CIP process or, I mean, I have a feeling right now, I mean, we're spending, if you're taking in 300,000, we're spending at least 300,000 on personnel at the jail every year, so we're not necessarily outside of,
Yeah, I
would
got to be
go,
honest, I don't know how you guys do what you do, okay? I can only tell you what I know that we bring in, and then you figure out from there.
So you're saying Supervisor Raddick, it'd be easy for the money to be used where it should be?
where it goes, yeah. I mean, I do like the idea, though, of, I mean, I think it's really smart to think ahead and, you know, even if you just phase it in lightly, kind of building up a CIP savings because, you know, even with the improvements we're making at the jail now, I mean, who's to say if we continue growing 25 years from now that anything we do over there would even be sufficient? So it'd just be I think it's a smart thing. Like I said, 25, 30 years from now, it's going to, I think people look back and say it was a good idea. You know, right now for immediate budgetary needs, it probably seems like a terrible idea. But,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, for
I
somebody
get
that's
it.
impulsive.
I
you know.
get 100% what you're saying. Long-term planning is honestly what was lacking in the past. Maybe get that 30,000 foot view versus 5,000 foot. And I think too often that was an angle to go just to get through each budget year. And I think you're better off if you look down the road.
Now, despite the glitch in the backup cover sheet, this is an information item.
Right.
So what steps are needed for this to be implemented?
Well, I'm not going to put that on Abigail. What I think the steps are necessary is, I would offer this. Let's see where those room and board dollars and those Marshall's dollars come. And next year, about the time we sit down to study and go over our budget, we have an idea where these dollars are, and then we move forward from them.
Well, because it says right in there that the supervisor will review the plan submitted during the normal budget process of the county.
Right. It'd
We've
be
got
a place
till-
to do it next year.
Yeah, we've got a good time now to put together a plan and come up with an idea.
Yep.
Well, in that time, you'll have the new fund set up.
Yep.
And backtrack it to the beginning of the fiscal year.
I don't want you to applaud now, because I usually always do it backwards. Remember, I come to you and ask, and I already passed the date, so I finally figured out I need to do it months ahead, so thank you.
Well, in your words, I suppose in your words, unlike previous boards, we're going to say, we're giving you the money, and it's because of this. So, Code 356.7.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're on to item 20. This is an action item from myself, formal request for the Sioux City Council to merge assessors. The city assessor has resigned, given your backup materials, effective July 1, and a majority of the county board supports merging assessors' offices to save taxpayers money. It is solely up to the Sioux City Council to cooperate with the county on this. After a chairman's report, the Sioux City Journal ran a story in March reiterating the fact that county board majority support exists for a merger to reduce redundancies and follow through on this often mentioned but often sidelined idea. Only a couple cities in Iowa of Sioux City's size have their own assessor. With this retirement effective July 1, I think the time to act is now. The savings, of course, would be to be determined, while the alternative of hiring a replacement city assessor is something the Sioux City Conference Board all seem to agree would be a net spending increase to the taxpayers. Members of this board lobbied members of the Sioux City Council in Washington, D.C. last week. Obviously, with this agenda going public, there was no public discussion at the last city council meeting yesterday on this. In the past, I believe a vote was declined, but it was discussed substantively in 2014. So we, I believe, should make a formal request just to reiterate the fact that the county, I believe, is still on board, and that formal action, the ball is in the Sioux City Council's court, so to speak. So despite our encouragement, again, it has not been formally discussed. And so I would make a motion to recommend, in a spirit of cooperation and collaboration, that the Sioux City Council reduce redundancies and save taxpayers money by discussing and voting by July 1 on the issue of dissolving the city assessor with the intent of merging with the county.
Second.
Second by Radig. Is there any discussion?
Appreciate you bringing this forward, Mr. Chair. I think it's time to get this thing done. It's been talked about ad nauseum. I think it makes sense for taxpayers. It's been suggested in looking at efficiencies from anyone in our local media as well as on this platform and forum. And if there's ever a time, if it's ever going to happen in the last 20 years, now would be the time to act. And so I'm hopeful that the city council does the right thing. And look, there's going to be some heartburn. There always is when you talk about efficiencies and consolidation, but it's time to get this done.
This agenda item would be forwarded to members of the city council, assuming approval from this board. I think the text speaks for itself. Any other comments from board members? Then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Passes 4-1, Potabom objecting. Thank you. Item 21 is from Planning and Zoning, Director Pilello. Item A is an action item, public hearing and approval of the first reading of ordinance number 44 regarding a zoning ordinance mapping amendment for lots 1 through 5 and outlot A of Whiskey Acres Addition.
John Palolo, Director Planning and Zoning. This is a companion issue tied to agenda item 17. When we approved that final plat earlier this evening, we created potential residential development that under the current zoning district would not allow the Planning and Zoning Office to issue building permitting. So we're requesting a rezoning from ag preservation to ag estate, which has an unlimited residential density. Questions? I'm asking you hold the public hearing and vote on the motion.
Thank you. Public hearing is open for anyone who would like to comment. Hearing none, I'd move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Second by Raddick. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. And on the motion,
So we move the first reading. Is that correct?
Pardon me?
Is there multiple readings on this, so we're moving the first, or?
No, you're essentially have to, a motion to approve rezoning to ag estates.
I'll move to rezone to ag estates.
Second.
motion by Raddick, second by Potabom. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item B is public hearing and approval of the first reading of zoning ordinance 44 regarding rezoning Lot 1 of initials RJ addition to light industrial.
Items B and C here are kind of companions because they come out of the same subdivision. You approved final platting last month. In this particular case, we want to change the zoning on Lot 1 from light industrial planned development to simply light industrial. This is the lot where the Rodney Lieber family operates Bridgeport Materials and a Lieber Construction Company on 150th Street. What we're doing is separating the home that was on the parent parcel from the industrial part of the parcel that was used in those two businesses. This would be the industrial, light industrial use continuing with the planned development to allow the house being removed. We're requesting to hold the public hearing and vote on the motion.
Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who would like to address this item?
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the public hearing be closed.
Motion by Taylor, second by myself to close the public hearing. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Now on the motion to rezone to light industrial.
I'll move to rezone to light industrial.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Lastly is item C, action item, public hearing and approval of the first reading of zoning ordinance number 44 regarding Lot 2 of the RJ addition.
This is obviously the other lot in the same subdivision. This is the lot which currently has the single-family dwelling. We're requesting light industrial plan development zoning be changed to ag preservation. If there's no questions, request you hold the public hearing and vote on the motion.
Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who would like to address the board?
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the public hearing be closed.
Motion by Taylor, second by myself to close the public hearing. Discussion.
Sorry.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
I'll move to rezone to AP, agricultural preservation.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 22, A through C, are action items from Director Kenny Schmitz, Building Services. First is A, approval of Siouxland District Health Boiler Project Change Order Number 1 with Plains Boiler Service dated May 1st in the amount of $2,470.
Kenny Schmitz, Building Services Director. The item before you is to upgrade the model from the current model that were previously bid to an upgraded model that has a higher efficiency rating. The impact would be $823.33 for each of the 3 boilers, for a total of $2,470.
What's the change in efficiency?
I'm going to refer to the Baker Group with that. Shane, can you?
The actual efficiency rating of the boiler did not change. The energy usage of the boiler does, though. So the turn-down rate of the old boiler was only 5-to-1. The new boiler is 10-to-1. So although there's still the same basic piece to it, it allows for more adjustment. Plus, it switched it from its other model to a fire tube type boiler. Fire tube boiler has less maintenance problems and lasts longer. It wasn't specified to start with one because the cost was estimated to be too high. But when we posed it back to them as a question, the low company said, "Hey, we can get you a fire tube boiler for $823 a piece," which it was a no-brainer that was a great choice then.
That's where the quality portion comes in.
So there are no other change orders then for the labor because we already had that bid out in the contract. Okay.
I'd move change order number 1 with Plains Boiler Service,
Second.
dated May 1st.
Motion by Taylor, second by Radig. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item B is approval of Resource Consulting Engineers proposal dated April 13th in the amount of $5,250.
The item before you is some issues directed at the Siouxland District Health Building. One of the things that we've been trying to accomplish, somewhat similar to what we had done with the LED project, is come about a way where we can realize some efficiencies and get some controls of our building to reduce our energy costs. Part of what this does for us is identifies some of those HVAC automation components or the components that are in that building. And it sets up the drawings for us to allow us to figure out what each component is doing to each location, in other words, for each room in the building, and be able to identify those. What that in the longer term will do for us is this will be another component that will be added to our overall HVAC system computer, where we will be able to view what each area of a building is doing and then control what it's actually doing. And this is really just the first step in identifying and making sure we know what all those components are and where they all are.
So what does step 2 cost?
Well, step 2 is really going to take us, I guess will take us into the actual components of that system, identifying maybe what components are working, not working, and Shane might be able to better understand or explain what those particular items are, but it will be, we'll find part of that out as we go along, but what we're going to do is tie into the existing systems that are there. But the next step would be probably changing some of those systems or adding to those systems so that we're able to control those in a manner that we need to. Some of that might be changing out some direct digital controls or adding some variable frequency drives or things like that to give us a better handle on what's taking place there, or tie into what's there that's currently either not being controlled properly or not being controlled at all.
Is this a Johnson-controlled building, or what?
It is,
Okay.
yes.
That's just more or less finding out if it's communicating with all lines accurately, and if basically we find that some of the mapping or something is not being done accurate, then we're looking at the cost to add controls for certain lines, essentially.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
So this is a Johnson control building that will no longer be Johnson controlled in the future though, correct?
That is correct.
So I guess my question goes along these lines. How do we prevent this from happening in the future? And the reason I ask that is it's really typical, right, when you make modifications to a building and you put in a new wall and all of a sudden room 123 isn't 123 anymore, it became 127. And that controller doesn't control what we thought it controlled. And you're talking a couple hundred different pieces of equipment that you're scheduling. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So is there a plan in place that all of the communication loops can be kept up? Does that question make sense, or?
It does. I think some of what the board has already tried to do is going to help with that. And what I mean by that is you've expressed to the other directors in different buildings that if they're going to do any upgrades or that they're going to do any projects, that they bring us and everyone else into the loop, so we've got some eyes on to see what's actually taking place. Now, it may be different if the county obtains another building and it's got a different system in it. That's a whole different scenario. But I think, to answer your question, yes, going forward, if we add on to any other existing accounts or we add on any other things, we make sure we can tie it into the current system that we have.
Thank you very much. I think that's key because I've seen time and time again, I've seen it here in the county where somebody wants to put in a conference room or let's put in this wall and there's no HVAC there or you haven't been included in on the loop. So if we could just kind of reiterate that going forward, I think that'd be good so we don't get in this situation again.
Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
A second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item C is approval of Resource Consulting Engineers quote dated April 25th for the equipment, documentation, controls, and energy rebate assistance in the amount of $12,000.
The item you have before you is for the Trosper Hoyt facility. In many ways similar to what we just talked about. The building's been changed, added on to, and there's never been any updated drawings. Very similar to the item we just talked to about Siouxland District Health. Looking at the same things. We're going to try to identify components, come up with blueprints and drawings that'll tell us where all those items are at. One of the unusual things about the Trosper Hoyt building, and I can't speak to the past, but we have a boiler and a chiller that's actually outside the realm of our building. It's in the CenturyLink building. And so we've got some unique features we need to deal with there. And we'll deal with those as we go along. But those are two big major components I'm speaking about there. And so there's not really ever been a good track record, if I can put it that way, of documenting changes as they came along or as they took place. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here before you today asking for a good set of documents to figure out what I need to do to climate control a certain area. I would already know what that is, or I would already know how I could tie into that and make it work. It's just where we're at.
These were all in our budget allocated for this, was it not?
Yes, they've all been allocated for in our CIPs.
I'll move item C.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Items 23A through F are a series of action items from County Engineer Mark Nara. Item A is to consider award of project number ending in 60-97. It's a new trick I learned. I just say ending in.
Well, the key number is the parent number. So if you just say parent number 112, that is the
Oh.
actual identifier
Okay.
with all of these
Search
projects.
for the parentheses.
This is the award of the project to replace the bridge on Old Highway 141 between the two D30A segments going to Bronson and Sergeant Bluff. I recommend award of the bridge to Christensen Brothers of Cherokee, Iowa for $952,298.
I'll move the award to Christensen's Brothers.
Motion by Raddick, second by myself. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item B is to consider award of project number known as parent what?
120, parent 129.
Parent 129.
This is the project to replace bridge number L275 on Union Avenue south of Cushing. This project is going to replace the existing bridge with an 80 by 30 single span concrete beam bridge. I recommend award of the project to Godberson Smith Construction Company of Ida Grove, Iowa for $399,363.90.
I'll move the recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item C is to consider award of project number parent 131.
This is a project to do hot mix asphalt rehabilitation and resurfacing on County Road D38 from the new 4-lane Highway 20 south to County Route D38 east of Anthem. I recommend award of the project to Henningsen Construction Incorporated of Atlantic, Iowa for $1,716,561.71.
I'll move the recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Discussion.
Where's Western Engineering out of?
Western Engineering is, they are out of, it's not Ida Grove, but they're out of southeast of here. They're out of Crawford County, northern Crawford County.
Okay.
They typically are very competitive when you see bid work being done on the eastern half of the county once we get east of the Mobile Blacktop. It's pretty much Knife River territory to the west.
Sure.
We didn't have a motion.
Yeah, we did.
We did?
Yeah, we did. I
We just need to
assume
vote.
we were waiting for something, but all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item D is to receive quotes for 2 new motor graders for the secondary road department.
I'll pass out a bid tabulation form in case the board wants to keep track. Karen has them upstairs apparently, so can we go on to
Yes, we'll move on to
DOT
item
budget amendment?
E, consider approval of Iowa DOT budget amendment for FY 2017.
It's not unusual each year. Last year we had a particularly large contract volume of local projects let. A good deal of that contract work didn't start until we had commenced into fiscal year 2017, so we had contract work authorized that isn't paid until the next fiscal year. The money stays within the secondary road fund. We just need the authorization to spend it. So this budget amendment takes into account the additional revenues we received through FEMA, the additional revenue received to cover the cost of the Dogwood Trail paving project, and then that carryover money within the secondary road fund for the pre-authorized projects.
I'd move to approve amendment number 1.
Second.
Second by Raddick. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. We now return to item 23D.
And this does require the signature of the chair and the auditor. We're now to the motor grader bids. One of these motor graders will replace an existing machine in the Correctionville district. The second is in the Odo district. The first quotation is from Ziegler Cat. The bid for the machine for the Mobile district is $320,063.49. The trade-in for Mobile, or I'm sorry, that isn't Mobile, Correctionville. The trade-in for Correctionville is a Cat 140H motor grader. Trade-in value on that machine is $67,500 for a net bid of $252,563.49. For the Odo district, same total purchase price of $320,063.49. Trade-in value on the John Deere 770C series machine, $28,500. Net bid, $291,563.49. That bid was for a Model 12 M3 all-wheel drive machine. We were also presented with a bid for a 140 M3 all-wheel drive. That is a higher horsepower machine, a little bit heavier. The net bid for Correctionville, $346,563.31. Trade-in, the same, $67,500. Net bid, $279,063.31. For the Odo district, $346,563.31 again. Trade-in value, $28,500 once again. Net purchase price, $318,063.31. I also requested a bid for a push blade. This is a blade that attaches to the front lift group. They come in particularly handy when we're doing flood cleanup and tasks like that because it sets up out in front of the front wheels on the motor grader. It works like a bulldozer then. You can't get to the mold board when you have a hole in front of you. So these bull blades come in very handy when we're pushing in behind a bridge abutment or a culvert that's washed out in the course of a flood. They bid $8,969.21 for that.
What was that number?
That was for the bull blade.
What was the
89.69.21. The next bid is from Murphy Tractor and Equipment Company. For the Correctionville district, net bid $309,900. Trade-in value, again on the Cat 140H, $67,500. Net purchase price $242,400. For the Odo district, $309,900. Trade-in value for the John Deere trade, $57,000. Net purchase price with trade, $252,900.
What machine are we bidding on?
That would be a 772G John Deere.
Do you have a bull blade on that or no?
Oh, yeah, he also did give us the requested bid for the push blade of $5,085.
You would like these referred for a recommendation?
I would like the opportunity to review the bids and come back with a recommendation for purchase next week.
I would move that.
Second.
Second by Taylor. Discussion. Just a question on the backup, mentions the county owns 21 motor graders, 20 have territory assignments, and 1 serves as a spare.
Yes.
That means it floats between different districts, right? It's not
Yes, if
in
we
a
have a
garage.
machine that's broke down, the spare goes out to that district so that we can maintain our snow removal or lighting service. The machines that we have that are under warranty, we require a 7-year, 7,500-hour warranty. If we are lacking parts on those machines for more than 72 hours, it's in the warranty that they provide us with a spare machine. So,
How many M40 size machines do you have?
140M machines, we have 3 currently. We have 2 140Hs that remain within the fleet. The John Deere machines we have, after this trip, we will have 1 more 770C series. We have a number of 770Ds. We have and we have 4, I think now, 772G or GP machines. GP being the ones with the electronic controls as opposed to the old antler rack at the windshield area.
So as a mix of machines, do we have mostly John Deere at the time, or?
We have more John Deere machines than we have Cat.
Hearing no further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Next is item F, consider approval of a rehabilitation project for 220th Street east of Old Lakeport Road. I will say what's submitted is a little different than what I was anticipating, but we'll let the county engineer give his recommendation.
Well, yeah, this was a difficult one for me to actually give a recommendation to the board. It's a project where I feel the need that I have to remind the board of policy and what goes into subdivisions in the rural area and what goes along with road improvements in those areas. When developments strip out along a gravel road, since sometime ahead of when if you remember I can bring up the map again if you'd like, but where the properties in blue were, there was a road improvement district attached to that development. When the developer agreed that they would put up a portion of the cost of the road improvement when that road improvement became necessary. At this point in time, 30 of the 32 lots are developed with homes on them. 2 lots are vacant, and then we have the 2 agricultural frontages along the road. These lots, unlike lots where we have a developer actually build a road that services the lots within the subdivision, there's a difference in their initial cost, and part of that difference in initial cost is that the developer doesn't have all of that upfront road development cost within it. It's been practice since prior to this subdivision that those road development agreements be put in place. At this point in time, the last 2 traffic count maps have shown that we've pretty well peaked out what you'd expect with the majority of those lots being developed on where that traffic count is. We've been 520 in one count, 540 in the other, in that area between Barker and Old Lakeport Road. Once you get to the east side of the subdivision, you drop to 90 vehicles per day, so you would consider that the background traffic that is using this road that isn't connected with the housing. The question I asked, and I sent the board a lengthy memo yesterday, I hope you had a chance to review that, is if we don't apply those road development agreements on a project like this, when do we actually do one? We have other subdevelopments that are strip developed along gravel roads. Subject to these paving agreements, when those lots sell, when those areas mature, when that traffic count gets there to the point where it justifies paving something more than just dust control, whether that dust control be chloride or whether it be a seal coat, at what point do we apply that road improvement agreement to it? I know there was a lot of expressed that the cost of the seal coat is much less. It's at no cost beyond the taxes that are paid by these properties against any of the lot owners out there. But at what point then, in 5 to 6 years, do we look at this discussion again? Or do we start to need to take a look at our county policy and wonder, well, why are we putting paving or road improvement districts in place if we're never going to exercise them? That would put then in front of these folks that build along a gravel road and subdivide along a gravel road that the road you've got now is the road you're going to see. I think you could see from the mathematics of it with the secondary road levy how the cost of even the seal coat is not paid back by the property taxes paid by these properties. And they pay a great deal of money, majority of that going to the schools. You know, the county levy has been kept in check here the last few years, and we're roughly less than 10% of that county portion controlled of the levy that goes against these properties. You know, again, the board is the one that's tasked with listening to the public. My job is to advise and make my decisions and recommendations based on policy. In this case, it just says recommendation down here. It would be nice if it said recommendation and comment, because what I gave was really more comment. Looking at the cost of the original seal coat, this seal coat, plus the next one that will be coming down the line, at that point in time, we will have spent approximately the county share of the cost of paving the road. I think we can look at one additional paving option that would be less costly as a first cost. We come back and put a final wedge level strengthening layer on it at about the same interval that we would do the 5 to 7 year seal coat. It would roughly be the same cost for 2 inches of asphalt at that point as a seal coat would cost. I laid those costs out for you in the memo that I did send to the board. I mean, none of these options are cheap. We don't like to spend money on projects like this any more than the residents out there do. But typically, our policy sets up that about 200 vehicles per day, we start dust treatment, because that's the point at which, when you get some housing density, it becomes very unpleasant to be out there in the summer. You can't open your windows. Once you hit between 300 and 600 vehicles per day, depending on which set of research you read, that's the point at which paving becomes the most economical long-term option for a roadway. At 540 vehicles per day of the current traffic count, we're there. The question is whether we wait another period with seal coat or whether we implement the road development agreement at this time. One of the things that we didn't discuss in depth at the meeting last week was we invited all the residents, even those that were outside of 220th Street, the improved area. The residents that are in that area subject to the road improvement district would be the only ones called upon to be taxed, but it would only be for that frontage. So we would be looking at less than the 6,600 feet to do that. We'd give you, I didn't have time to run out what those numbers would be today, but that would mean we would shorten up before we get to those half-acre lots that were discussed that are at the east end, that were in that red shaded area in the map last week. But at this point, what we're looking for is direction from the board on which way to go. Again, our departmental comment is that we have that road development agreement in place. We have that in place not only in this subdivision, but other subdivisions who will someday hit this same level of traffic. This board needs to give direction, guidance, and determine whether they're going to remain with that policy or whether we should be reviewing those policies for determining how we treat roads like this into the future.
Mr. Taylor?
So how long does the paving last?
Paving prior to the first major renovation that would need to be done, we're probably 25 to 30 years. What we're proposing as a lower cost alternative to get us headed toward paving would be to put 6 inches down instead of the 8 inches that was subject to the original estimate. That would lower the first cost for the residents, and then we apply the cost of that seal coat that we were going to do in 5 to 7 years to an additional 2 inches of asphalt at county expense. That would get us up to a full depth pavement for this roadway.
So my initial thing would be seal coating, would cost about $360,000 for 22 years. 3 applications, approximately, if it's on the long end of it. The only difference is that residents are paying in the one and not the other.
They
Is
are
that
paying
fair?
anything for the seal coat in this
Right.
case, right?
And to me, I think I mean, we went out and visited, heard public hearing. I would move the seal coat option.
I would second it.
Can I ask a question too? On the item 23C with Henningsen Construction for County Road D38, how long was that stretch?
It's approximately 6 miles.
Okay.
It includes a 3-inch asphalt overlay and then 4 inches of cold-in-place recycling. So we're going in, grinding it up,
Yes.
adding new asphalt, laying it down, and then overlaying it.
Wouldn't this be similar if they had to go out and grind up the seal coat and put down 3-inch asphalt?
Part of it's higher cost to do what we're doing there on County Road L36, or I mean L37, because we're injecting new asphalt into that material after it's ground.
Correct.
It is then remixed.
And used right there on site.
It's used there on site. It's laid down with a paver and rolled. So it's a more costly process than what we're proposing to do when we chew up the seal coat.
Right. No, I'm just saying if you chose to do, a 3-inch overlay on 220th, wouldn't it be, similar cost per mile?
I don't believe we'd end up with a similar cost per mile in this case because 3 inches isn't enough to cap this road. We were looking at a full depth concrete design of 7 inches, a full depth asphalt design of 8 inches over the stone base that's out there.
Okay.
So we were looking at a more robust design than what we're doing. We already have 6 inches on County Road L36 or
Okay.
L37.
So you're just grinding up the top 3?
Yes.
Okay.
I had one question on that seal coat option. I did include the price for the seal coat of the current area and then also extending that past those last lots. That was an additional $40,000. A part of that cost increase was due to the fact that in the area under the current seal coat, we have 10 inches of aggregate base. Once we get outside of that area that's currently improved, we're down to 4 inches or less. So the $40,000 estimated to go on an additional 1,600 feet would be the extra money for placement and stabilization of additional gravel. As you saw in the memo, I did not recommend we go beyond the current seal coat. If the board chooses to do this project as maintenance of what was there, I would really not recommend that we go beyond there, especially since those subdivided areas for the most part precede any of the road improvement districts or paving agreements, with the exception of that one tiny little lot.
Would you clarify the motion?
So if I make sure I understand that it would be a cost over and above the $360,000, is that correct?
If you go the additional 1,600 feet, you're adding $40,000 to this first project.
So we're at $400,000, is that correct, or
You'd
that?
be a little over 400,000 because probably another 10 grand for seal coat. So that would be for the extra layer the second time on that next portion.
And your recommendation, if we were going to go the seal coat option, would be not to do that because it's an improvement beyond what's already there. It's adding something that there's no precedence for and that preceded the development agreements there.
Correct.
Yes.
And I'll second that clarification.
So it would be to approve a project amount of $360,000 in order for the county engineer to do the seal coat option and not, no.
Yeah, just say we get the wrong numbers.
We're getting really mixed up here.
Okay.
I believe the motion
Oh,
is
okay.
to
Sorry.
repair the
Yeah, so,
220th
okay.
Street by reconditioning the base and seal coating the surface, roughly a cost of $100,000.
That. Did you get that, Mr. Auditor?
But at least.
So the
that-
seal coat option not going beyond what's currently there?
It would be 140,000 this year to go all the way to the east.
Okay, and that's what I was asking is, when I mixed up the first figure, the 360 to 400, you're saying that first figure is how much?
The first figure is 102,000 to rehabilitate what's out there.
Okay, thank you.
But you are looking at it correctly. You're looking at the cost from the first time we put the seal coat down to the next seal coat, in looking at that $400,000 roughly, or 360.
So the 360 is when I said over the 22 years, if we did it 3 times?
Right.
Okay.
That's correct. And that's roughly equivalent to what our local, what the county taxpayers' share of this road improvement would be.
And that's the number you were throwing out with the first one. That's why you had me confused.
Yeah. Well, now I understand the confusion.
Yeah.
If I could.
Yes.
How long
So I was originally trying to look at if we did this
we have
3 times over,
You-
what would it be in comparison to?
You have a
paving?
You had the right number for that comparison.
Yes.
So the motion is to do the seal coat option at $102,000.
Well, it'll go out to bid, so it'll be
Okay.
what it is. But to do the seal coat option to rehabilitate the existing seal coat portion of 220th would be the most concise way to say it.
I concur.
Supervisor Potabom?
Yes.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. How long has the seal coat been down out there now?
The current one is really gone, we've worked hard to keep something out there, but it's been out there since, I believe, 2007.
Okay, so it's been about 10 years.
Yes.
And, because you keep saying 5 to 7, but I thought when we had the public hearing that we thought a seal coat could last 10 years.
We should have chewed it up a couple of years ago.
But that's why we thought instead of the 11,000 a year for dust control, that the 100,000 for seal coat was about a wash.
If we can get it to last that long. We will put some stabilizing material in the existing base when we lay it down again. One of the points that the residents made that's quite correct is we shouldn't be seeing the number of ready-mix trucks going out over this as we did when that subdivision was being
built.
finished. We do still see some farm traffic. You'll be seeing a spring resolution to embargo that road every year because we'll really want to protect this investment. There's no reason that road has to be used for ag travel except for those farms that are right on that road because they have Buchanan Avenue to the east where they can go north and then not run over this road.
If I could, one question for Supervisor Taylor. So you mean for us to do the reseal at county expense?
Right, because there's no development agreement otherwise.
Okay.
So that begs the question, how does a seal coat not count as paving necessarily?
Paving when you look at whether it's when you look at the DOT regulations and the way we budget, we have basically seal coat under 8 inches. We have asphalt 8 inches plus, looking at what a full depth asphalt design is. A seal coat basically lends no structure to the road. It's like putting a membrane over the top.
Well, I know what it is,
okay.
but I mean, to me, that should count. I mean, if you're preparing sub base and you're putting on basically asphalt and chips, and I mean,
But in the engineering,
it's certainly not gravel.
right. But in the engineering vernacular, it is little more than gravel.
What is the legal vernacular?
Well, that would be whatever the DOT uses when they give us our items for contracting and bidding.
Okay.
Seal coat work is bid as maintenance. When we do paving or an overlay, that's bid as construction and rehabilitation.
So the development agreement basically shows that any maintenance would be borne by the county.
That's correct.
Any construction / paving is a 60/40 split.
60/40 split, county and property owner.
It does kind of make that whole agreement worthless, because most people would probably opt for the free option.
I would agree.
So, I mean, there's obviously a few in the past, I know on the city's alley agreements that have paid for the, for concrete, but it's interesting, I don't imagine us ever using it much in the county. So.
Right. And again, that might call for some consideration by our policy committee as you're looking at our ordinances and reviewing county policies. If the board doesn't have the intention of exercising those paving or road development agreements when, again, the road gets to that mature level where it should be paving instead of just seal coat.
When it has been exercised, what are the dynamics there?
The last one we done was DeRocher Path, and those folks paid off the last of their 10-year payments. I believe it was in 2014 was the last time I saw it. Pat might remember for sure, but it seems like that's when the money stopped coming in for that. Yeah, some folks paid off early, but it was about a 2004, 2005 project. And once everything had been built up out there and folks were no longer happy being in the dust, the assessment was levied and the project undertaken.
And that's the cooperative measure that I think is the reason why sometimes these are enacted and sometimes not. Mr. Taylor?
So with a paving agreement, do residents have to agree? Can it be foisted upon them? Not that that's what's happening here. But
I think it's silent on who initiates it.
But can the county go and say, we're going to pave, and we're going to exercise that, whether it's wanted or not?
I feel we have that ability. That would be a good question for our assistant county attorney, but I don't see where the county board could not exercise that.
And I think for me in this instance, we haven't heard anyone who's wanted that, and so it would feel like it's being brought in, especially if the seal coat lasts just as long.
We'll see.
Right. Based on your estimates, the cost will be
5 to 7, yeah. But we're also looking at something being there that's salvageable, recyclable, and that we can do a rehabilitation on that's a lower cost in the future at a much longer life. We're looking at 2 overlays in 40 years. We'll be looking at 6 seal coats in that same 40 years. So the cost grows as we get farther out. We seal coat, seal coat, seal coat. Shelby County is the county that we think of most with seal coat. They had over 600 miles of it. They have eliminated it, and they're down to about 180 miles of pavement now. And gradually, it's a very, fortunately, we only have this is it for our seal coat. Everywhere else that we have hard surfacing, we're pavement. We're at least 4 inches, if not more, asphalt or 6 inches of concrete. So this road is unique, and I think it's at the time when 2007 came around, again, none of us here were privy to that decision, but I think they viewed it as being easier to maintain as dust control than what chloride is. We all saw what we went through with keeping CF roads open under the heavier traffic. And, Glen Ellen is a road we have a very difficult time keeping smooth as long as we'd like. We've started to add mixtures to the gravel before we apply the chloride treatment to extend its life so we can get by on that 2 shots of dust control per year that our program calls for. Sorry about the extra long explanation.
It's okay.
I know you usually prefer brevity. But
No problem. I'm ready to vote if everyone else.
Is there any other discussion? And the motion on seal coating the existing area. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
we'll work to get the best project going we can.
Thank you. Item 24 is the chairman's report, A through C information. First is the ISAC Smart Connections Conference from a while back on April 27th. Won't make too many comments, just want to say I've noticed more and more in the IT world just how unique and mutually beneficial the Woodbury County Information and Communication Commission is, jointly with Sioux City, and how smoothly that works. And hopefully that's a good indication for something like an assessor's office coming shortly. Also, there's discussion about a customer experience, engaging that rather than customer satisfaction at the end of a service-related process. I think that was a good piece of advice, to focus on the little bits. Every point of contact someone has in the courthouse is its own customer experience. Item B is the 63rd Annual Siouxland Washington Conference, myself and Supervisor Radig. It was an interesting time to be in DC because unbeknownst to us as we were going there, a $1.1 trillion omnibus bill was set to be approved, which cut hardly anything. And so therefore the specific programs our regional representatives advocated for, such as community development block grants, home investment program, of course, were included in that. The funding was very indiscriminate, and we heard from senators there that between approval by the House and approval by the Senate, somehow it grew from 1.1 to $1.6 trillion. So there's very little draining going on in DC, I would say, and financial-wise with this omnibus budget. But in relation to the items the city had brought forward, the Chamber and Simcoe, of which Woodbury County is a part, those are continuing. And so that is locally the news there. Supervisor Radig, did you have anything to add?
I was asked about some land that was along the river out in Woodbury County that is currently Corps of Engineer and it can't be built on, being shifted back to the Winnebago tribe. So if there's anyone that disagrees with that, let me know, and I'll let Grassley staff know, because I said I think that's probably going to be okay and probably unanimous, but if anyone disagrees with that idea, let me know, and I'll get a hold of Grassley staff and say that that is not the case. But the land is unbuildable, and it's along the riverfront, and it's just a way of giving back some of the land. That
I think on that issue, Mr. Taylor.
That'll be coming forward as an agenda item, asking for the support of this board on land that by rights belongs to the Winnebago tribe. So,
as other counties have done. So.
And then I just say there's a lot of good networking. It was good to get some time to speak with my replacement across the alley, and the council, especially regarding. And of course, it was individually and separately, since there were 3 members of the council there. It was never a meeting, but it was just lobbying those that were across the aisle. Ridiculous, we had to go to Washington to do that, I guess. But no, I would say that it was interesting to see how little in Washington, D.C. had changed, and almost defiantly, the House and Senate seemed determined to spend more than last year. I asked about any potential for future jail funding, which was met with, we'd have to get earmarks back in order to have that kind of authority, because there's currently no grant programs for that kind of spending. And that would be about the extent of what was discussed.
And finally, item C is following up with an email I sent to elected officials and department heads recently, that due to my being out of the country from May 11th to 26th, Vice Chair Jeremy Taylor will be acting chair during those dates, and will approve the next 3 board meeting agendas and will chair the next 2. Thank you, Mr. Taylor, for your work there. And any questions in that regard? I think it'll be a pretty smooth process. And again, something Auditor Gill brought forward, that we need bylaws that specify how the succession process goes, and it's been smooth since we've had those.
I think the bylaws lay out that meetings that are run by the vice chair can last no longer than 30 minutes. So just if you want to plan your evenings accordingly.
Well, the vice chair cannot ask any questions then.
That's true.
Item 25 then is reports on committee meetings. I'll note that there is a historical committee minutes from April 18th included in your agenda packet, and perhaps Mr. Taylor would like to start with that.
So my plan is to read them to you. Just kidding. You have them in your packet. I won't belabor the point. We did have a historic committee meeting today. I'll just give you a couple of the highlights that I think are pretty cool. This is going to be a big deal. Right now we're looking at potentially the first week of May. That'll need to come before you all for approval at some point. But just one highlight, and I'll give you minutes again for probably next meeting, is that there is a time capsule in the Cornerstone that we're looking to actually open that...
Without toppling the building.
Right, without toppling the building. But some of the things that are listed that were put in there, including a 1 cent, 5 cent, 10 cent, all these pieces of coinage from 1816, 1857, and copies of the Sioux City Journal, or the Tribune at the time, and different pictures and photographs. That's a really, really neat find that'll credit Auditor Gill for digging up. And what we're talking about doing is opening the contents of that, maybe having it on display for some time, and then putting back into it things that we want opened up in 2118. None of us hopefully will be around. But the idea is kind of looking back to the past as we try to restore this courthouse to its original beauty for the future. And so I'll include this, but some fascinating things that are listed as being in there. And we'll give you some more details of our meeting. Great working group, great volunteers, and I think it's going to be a great time and a good thing for our city.
Any other reports on committee meetings?
I attended the Les Hills Alliance meetings in place of Mr. Potabom.
Thank you for doing that.
Well, it was always educational. There was some funding cuts from 150,000 down to 40,000, so everything is wrapped around the almighty dollar. But the most interesting thing that was talked about while I was there, the Les Hills Alliance has a website documenting pictures. You know, I suppose it's the tourism side of the whole package, but the website has some software on there that documents what nations are looking and what states, I suppose, what these visitors to the website. And apparently the Russians have very strong interest in the Les Hills, to the point that the FBI got involved, and they're looking at them. But as soon as the FBI started looking at it, they quit viewing it so much, so apparently the Russians have software to tell when they're being looked at.
That's
so
incredible.
It is incredible. It was entertaining. I thought it was just going to be another spiel about when someone brought up the Russians, our past election. And no, it was actually some interest in the Les Hills by the Russians.
They want to defect and retire in the Les Hills.
One might think that, because the old home filler up and Keep On Truckin' Cafe is down in Pisgah. And of course, Pat might remember it being his, never mind. But no, it was interesting, the stewardship. They were talking about the ecology part of it, with their finding so many new plants and trees that they'd walked past before, and it was just the Les Hills is a very wondrous area, and obviously only one of two in the world. The other one's in China. You might have heard of it. So
I think that's the purpose for his trip.
that might be.
I had one more really quickly. The region, we're going to be meeting hopefully with the CEO. Supervisor Raddig and I are looking to meet with our budget analysts. Plymouth County took action today to lower their levy. That's the good news. That might help us because it's kind of a teeter-totter effect.
Is that to lower the levy?
To increase their levy, sorry. Yeah, which can help us to lower ours. but it may not be to the degree that we were hoping, so we're just going to kind of explore what the ramifications will be for us. And there's a timeline and a deadline, so I'll try to come back with more information for you.
Any other reports on committee meetings? Citizen concerns?
Hi, I'm Jeremy Bach from 1493 220th Street. Just want to thank the board for their vote today. I do have one concern though. With the bridge closure over there on Old 141, I know they're going to be detouring some traffic off of D38 down Carroll Avenue and then back east on 220th towards Bronson. I do think a lot of traffic is going to be on 220th, and I live in the unpaved portion of 220th. So just curious if we could, just for the summer, get some dust control on that portion, if that makes sense. We were talking about the last 1,600 feet. I know they're not going to seal coat that portion, but if they could just chloride it, just for at least for the summer while that bridge is closed. I think a lot of local people from Sergeant Bluff and Bronson area are going to take 220th and head straight east, because it can just, instead of going east on D38 out of Sergeant Bluff and then south and then east, they're just going to go straight east, if that makes sense.
And you likely know more about the possible routing than I would in my position, but I think if it does make sense, then it would be done.
If that's okay.
Can we get this gentleman's maybe name and email address and follow up with our county engineer as well and get you some sort of response?
Okay, that'd be fine.
Do you have your information on the back there, or is that something you can write down for us?
Put it back there already, so I'll make sure to include an email address.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yep.
We'll make sure the engineer gets back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Next citizen.
Or sheriff.
Or sheriff.
The citizen address is funny.
I'll be real quick. Not putting that on the spot. Don't get scared. Don't get scared. I know he sent an email, he sent it to me. I just want, our place is the hardest place to keep track of. Okay. And you had mentioned to the board that, about adding a deputy.
Yes.
Okay. And that's where it gets hard. Okay. We're just replacing, Greg's actually a deputy that holds the title of major.
Yes.
And so that's what we're replacing. We're not asking for, yeah, I didn't want to confuse you. I think that's where you got confused. I just, somebody leaves, we have we have 38 deputies. The sheriff is 39. So if one of them leaves, I have to replace him. Regardless if he's colonel, captain, whatever, even though I don't have colonel, you know what I mean. So when one leaves, so that, I didn't want to confuse the issue. And Ed, no place is more confusing than the sheriff's office. And so he falls under civil service, and that process is taken, so you don't have to open a position or anything like that. So I wanted to clear that up, because his intent is very well taken, but he's a deputy. So we're not adding one more. Okay, thank you. Everybody understand? Thanks.
And I trust if that was a concern still, then it would have been discussed during that item.
Yeah, but I didn't know.
But
Where it was.
appreciate the additional clarification.
And I think my mistake was that I assumed that it was, that he's still appointed, because you have an appointed position. Obviously, I was wrong on that. So an additional patrol deputy would just replace the.
Right. For the good of the public, Director Gillen said what the sheriff just said. Makes it easier. No other citizen concerns, then are there any board concerns? Be sure you guys hold Vice Chair and soon-to-be Acting Chair Taylor to this 30-minute goal for the next meeting. I'll appreciate that if I'm calling in at 5:30 in the morning, local time. We are adjourned.